Just one second.
So you see, just of this list, also
All right. So, hi everyone. Welcome. It's quite exciting to be here. I'm going to sign off, of course, to Vidi very quickly. But before that, this is just something that we do since the remote learning has started. Is ask everyone, how are you all doing? Because we want to ensure everybody keeps their mental health in front of everything that they're doing. What we'll also do is, of course, please request everyone to mute their mics while the sessions are going on so that it just makes the whole session a little bit easier. Okay, so I will now, of course, hand it over to Vidhi to do the honors. Vidhi? Vidhi, are you there?
Oh, sorry. I just realized
I'm
I
there.
was muted. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vidhi Sharma and your MC for today. We are pleased to welcome you all to the 9th ReBitVlogs Majlis. Before we go ahead, here is a look at our agenda for the hour. So we first have a welcome note, after which we introduce our panelists. Then we move forward to the panel discussion, where the teams put forward their views, the experts share their insights, teams put forward their questions, and the experts respond. Then we have the audience question and answer session, and finally the closing. Kindly do note that the entire session is being photographed and video recorded for educational and promotional purposes. Now, to tell us a bit about ReBitVlogs, I would like to invite Dr. Zeenat Khan, the assistant professor here at UOWD and the founding creative mind behind the Majlis, to tell us about it.
Thank you so much, Vidhi. It's a pleasure, of course, to invite everybody, particularly this cohort of students, the UWD staff, and of course, our esteemed guests who are here today. ReBitVlogs is basically an innovative platform that was initiated, I think, almost 3 years ago to engage students in discussions on pressing responsible business and technology matters. We decided to do this because when we were teaching, we realized the first question students ask is, really, is that what really happens in the industry? I mean, we seem to be sitting in the classroom and debating all of these decisions. Is this really what's out there? Because we don't see it. So we realized instantly there was a very, pertinent need in the industry to have that dialogue with students so that they could engage with experts such as the ones that we have today with us, so that they could see what really happens out there. So it works like a link between the students, academics, and of course the industry experts. Sometimes we've had government and non-government officials as well, creating this environment of awareness and facilitating this dialogue towards a sustainable and responsible future. Every semester, we actually highlight a whole different area. And this semester is no different. Last semester, we looked at fashion and technology. This semester, we're looking at technology and remote teaching because, hey, isn't that what we are all talking about? So we're quite excited to be here and quite interested to hear what students have to say and, of course, what our experts have to say on the topic. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zeenat. The theme for this Majlis is Role of Technology in Remote Teaching and Assessing with Integrity. UNSDG 4 states that education must be accessible and inclusive in nature. The fourth industrial resolution has made this possible, connecting people through partnership with industries, increasing knowledge fluidity, student and faculty mobility. New-to-world products using cutting-edge innovations and technologies never seen before can often have the true power to change education horizon. However, COVID-19 has been the biggest disruptor that the education sector has faced in recent times. With more than 1.5 billion students affected by lockdowns, making up 91.3% of all enrolled students and learners across 188 countries. This is the largest closure of schools and universities, forcing learning to move to digital space. Technology has played a crucial role in ensuring the continuity of learning for students everywhere. However, most often maintaining quality and integrity takes a backseat to the urgency of continuity. Education continues. Afghanistan's education moved to use radio education and DVDs to continue learning, especially for girls in the aftermath of the conflict and the violence. Similarly, Hong Kong universities shifted to digital platforms to continue learning for students in the days and months following anti-government protests. COVID-19 pandemic has forced many schools and universities to shift completely to the digital platform. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that all campuses were ready to face such a challenge or that the industry had the required technology in place to support such a shift. Teaching is crucial. Assessing important to establish effective learning has taken place, and that students have achieved the learning objectives of the courses taught to them. But cases such as the one from Kerala, India, where the online grades of students were largely inflated, or the issue of Zoom and Google storing student data without knowledge or explicit consent, or even the issue of privacy raised by university use of online proctoring solutions, all raise serious questions about the effectiveness and the authenticity of assessments and safety and privacy online. So how do we go forward? What is the answer to this dilemma? Are these issues real ethical issues in IT and businesses? This invited panel sits through the sands of ethical dilemmas faced by universities, governments, teachers, students, and tech developers around the world, their consequences, and the need to understand the impact of technology on remote teaching and assessing. We are honored and excited to welcome our panelists today. Our panelists for today are Associate Professor Anne Rogerson, is the Associate Dean at the Faculty of Business and Law at University of Wollongong in Australia. Her research focuses on interpersonal communication in organizational contexts and issues related to the detection and prevention of academic integrity issues. From a governance perspective, she designs and implements policies and investigates allegations of academic integrity for onshore and offshore campuses. She is a subject matter expert on the use of Turnitin. Dr. Salim Razi is an associate professor at the English Language Teaching Department of Çanakkale Onyx's Mart University, Turkey. He is also a founder board member of the European Network for Academic Integrity. He has been teaching academic writing for more than a decade and developed transparent academic writing rubric to enable more reliable assessment in academic writing. Jarrett M. Dyer, MBA, is an experienced testing center administrator with over 15 years of industry experience. He has spent the majority of his career focused on the standardization of the testing industry, specifically as it relates to proctoring and testing administration. Jarrett is the president of the National College Testing Association and has been a member of the executive committee since 2014. He has also served on a number of industry committees. In order to select our student panelists, we had an initiative on campus based on judges' scores and popular voting. Each team selected a speaker who are joining our industry experts today: Mohammed Nadir, Jayatma Gamaj, and Rayan Chanchan. Welcome, everyone. Finally, the panel is moderated by Dr. Zeenat Reza Khan, and the Twitter and question and answer will be handled by myself. Now we will move on to the next segment of today's Majlis, which is the panel discussion. May I please request everyone that once the discussion Majlis begins, please do not unmute your mics or activate your webcams. Sit back and enjoy the panel discussion.
Okay, so I would like to request our student speakers to please also unmute your mics and activate your webcams at this point.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Nader.
Hello.
Yeah, I see Jatma. Where's Ryan? There we go. Okay, we are all set. Okay, so we will begin. Thank you so much, Vidhi, for that introduction. And personally, of course, a warm welcome to Anne, Salim, and Jared. It's an absolute pleasure to be able to host you guys. And in a way, I thank remote learning for that because, before this, thinking of anything like this was always going to be like, should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? Now it's not even a question. Let's just do it. And it's amazing that we can just reach out to anybody, anywhere. And you guys were awesome to actually join us. Jared, like I said, you take the cake today. It's 3:30 p.m. at where Jared is right now, guys. So that's pure passion to be here. Thank you so much for joining us, Jared. So Vidhi kind of set the tone with the whole topic, telling us why we are here. And as I mentioned before, we had a round of these poster competitions where we had our students come up and talk about a variety of issues that we have seen actually emerge because of the excessive maybe indulgence and dependence on technology during the remote learning and assessment processes. Yes, Sarah, AM for Jared, not PM. So we have seen a number of different, very varied areas of concerns that's been raised, whether it has to do with privacy and security of data, privacy of the self, or of course academic integrity, with the integrity of the actual teaching and learning that we are hoping to continue with the whole technology that is available to us. So what we hope to achieve today is go through each of our students and hear a bit from them, and then move on to our experts. And as we do that, of course, at any time, if you guys have any questions for each other, please do just, jump in and say, could I please ask a question about what they've just said? And we will, of course, stop and hear you before we continue on. Once we've done the rounds of all our speakers, we will open the floor for the class to ask questions. And just a reminder again, guys, please make sure you guys are using that Twitter handle to ask your questions. And Vidhi is keeping a very close eye, as she promises me, on those questions so that she can pull up the most interesting ones and then ask away to the panel. So without further ado, I think the one that we would want to actually start off with perhaps is the students. So Jatma, you are telling us from the student perspective how you see the role of technology has been when it comes to remote learning and teaching. So go for it, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jatma, and I'm a computer science student. Technology is not just a tool. It can give the learners a voice that they may not have had before. This is a quote by George Couros. Technology, without a doubt, is the greatest teaching assistant for the teachers and the best learning aid for the students. However, like any other, this could either be a boon or a bane. When it comes to remote learning, undeniably, us students are the most affected. And if not for technology, so much of our valuable time would have been wasted, especially during this pandemic situation. More than 1.5 billion students have been drastically affected by this, which is 91.3% of the students enrolled and learners all across 188 countries. Though remote learning is challenging, it has opened gateways for some students to thrive at the finest. If asked about remote learning from children in lower grades, their experience is entirely different from us uni students. Often students in remote classes find it easier to express themselves as they are in an environment that they're more comfortable with. This also leaves the students with a lot of time in their hands because of the flexibility of class timings and travel times. Hence, this could be used for other extra activities, thus increasing their participation, attention spans, and even energy levels. Moreover, constant advancements in technology such as Kahoot, Socrative, and any other online engaging platforms allow students to be interactive and innovative. Software such as Turnitin encourage students to perform way better than they do. Being a student, the experience with remote learning has been way different than of what we have at a physical classroom. If not for softwares like WebEx or Zoom, I feel like I would have lost the bare minimal connection I have left with my teachers and my peers. But with all that said, Digital access, connectivity, and security is still an issue of higher concern. Not all students have the access to high functioning devices or the perfect internet connections. During classes, there were many a times where me and my fellow peers faced connection issues, which would often lead to us missing parts of a lecture or even the entire lecture at times. Sometimes we would also face issues with our microphones or webcams and would have to look for other alternatives to connect, such as the chat box or others. And often we fail to get our points across. Not and privacy, which is highly at stake. Most online platforms such as Zoom and Google are known to record the lectures and discussions, which can later be used for blackmail or leaked, thus violating everyone's privacy. Moreover, the level of understanding varies from student to student. Not all students are independent learners. Many students who perform well on a day-to-day basis have noticed changes in their grades due to the fact of not properly understanding concepts via digital learning. Children in smaller grades especially find it harder to learn without their teachers around them and having technology. Students also find it difficult to concentrate using technology, as technology has so many other uses which are far more interesting and entertaining than studying and research. Exams, maintaining the integrity is also an issue of higher concern. This often leaves ample amount of opportunities for the students to cheat, how much ever precautions or integrity measures are taken. Thus, this can often be a disadvantage for the students who are faithfully writing their exams. Not to forget, invigilators are often too quick to judge that the students are cheating, and the students would often have to go to great lengths to prove their innocence. But also using other measures such as third-party apps to monitor, as ProctorU, which uses human invigilators, MERS method used by Christ University to detect movement and block internet users, or even students having to keep their webcams on, are a violation of their privacy. And this leads to higher anxiety levels within the students, making them difficult to perform better. Another issue is computer fatigue. An increase in screen time cannot be neglected, which results in students sitting in front of a computer for longer periods of time with back-to-back classes having drastic effects on their health. To conclude, technology, of course, can be a boon or a bane, but are you ready for remote learning to be a long-term integration? Thank you.
Interesting points, Jayatma. I think our experts are going to have a fun time talking about some of those. So we will now move from the student's perspective to the university and teacher's perspective. So Ryan, are you there?
Hello. Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rayan, and I'm currently studying mechanical engineering at UWD. Now, today we're going to be talking about technology in terms of remote learning and education. Um, it is no doubt that education is embracing digital classroom revolution. Technologies ushers in fundamental structural changes in the improvements in productivity. Technology was used to support teaching, was used to support learning overall that infuses classroom with digital tools. Technology supports the students 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and even builds a 21st century skills that kind of increases the students' engagement and, accelerates the learning overall. Now, from the teachers and from the university's faculty's perspective, um, we saw that technology had the power and has the power actually to transform teaching into a whole new level. It is found that teachers and the students have actually a bond. There is a link that is unbreakable. Now, according to the National Centers for Education Statistics, it was found, I mean, there are institutions that actually monitor the engagement of students on the digital learning and learning courses. It is found that in 2017, from 19.7 million students, 6.6 million of which are actually enrolled in some sort of distance learning and education online courses. So this statistics actually highlights the whole theme in which students are more and willing to actually be educated through online courses. Now, again, there is for every pros there is cons in the situation. For example, let me give you a very straightforward example. It is slave trade educational game. Slave Trade is an educational game that was created and released on the 13th September 2013, if I'm not mistaken, by the Danish company. So what does this game actually is an activity it's for young students from around 7 to 14 years old. They do this activity in which they see pictures, videos, and they stash black bodies, okay, on the ship. This game, little did they know, it actually went upside down. It created racism. It promoted segregation between students, and there was a lot of conflict. So it kind of increased the rage within the parents, within the students. So again, sometimes technology can be misused and misinterpreted, especially for young students. So we need to tackle that point as well. Now, there is one more thing that, from teachers' perspective, that might kind of see it as a conflicting issue in terms of technology, which is device management. I think Jayasma as well actually tackled that point, in which device management is very vital pillar, right, for learning, for digital learning, in education institutions. For example, we have in a classroom hundreds of devices, maybe thousands, and can actually, lead to in the IT technicalities problems and conflicts. So sometimes, again, sometimes the classrooms are even done, or sometimes they finish the classroom because we cannot sign in because there's a lot of devices access in there. So again, the teachers would likely to manage the classroom in terms of assessment and in terms of classroom, instead of focusing on the IT technicalities conflicts, right? So the students and the teachers would like to have it in a very sophisticated manner and in a very straightforward fashion of education. Thank
Okay, I think that was a very, very interesting point to leave with, that the technology should be easy to use. You think by now we would have technology that is actually easy to use, right? But if
Yeah.
anything, in the last 5 months, we've seen how that's not always true. Okay, so we move on to now Nader, who is going to talk to us from the governance perspective. And I think he's got some slides that he's sharing with us. How interesting.
Yes, hello everybody. This is Mohammed Nader. I'm studying media and communications, and I am here to represent the role of the government as a stakeholder of the government in the remote learning experience. So first of all, what did governments do? In the beginning, like UAE, like most other countries, they've given their students 2 weeks of midterm break, early midterm break, so they can assess how should we do. There's a pandemic, what should we do? We have to use technology and make good use of it to give our students a good experience. And it gave universities, of course, a good time to assess what apps could they use, how will they be engaging with their students, and so. Now, what governments have done is considered very crucial because they have put the priority as the students and the professors. Moving on, one of the most interesting things that have happened and caused controversy is the pass or fail, the satisfactory or unsatisfactory. Now, universities like Massachusetts have said that all the grades will be pass or fail. Students don't get to choose their grades. But this has caused a lot of controversy. Like students were saying, oh, this semester I was doing so good. I had like 3 A's. Why is it my fault that I won't have my grades counted? But of course, other governments like the UAE, for example, has forced the universities to give the option to the students whether you want your option to be pass or fail or be counted. Of course, the government's reaction after the pandemic hit, different governments have had different opinions on that. Saudi Arabia, for example, has said that all our students, the school students, will be passing their grade, will get passed because they thought that they might have, they couldn't cope with the technology. But that, of course, has a lot of negatives on the long term because universities in the different regions will start questioning the knowledge that these students will be having in the future, like they have passed all their grades. So how could we make sure that they are well educated? As we move on to the what did the government do to make remote learning good? So US has given its students free internet access. UAE has also promised, with a collaboration with the Do and Etisalat, which are the leading networks in the UAE, to provide free internet for those who face trouble. Universities like Stanford have also announced that they will gather laptops of students who are not in need and donate them to the students who are in need, because as Jayatma pointed out, a lot of students are actually suffering from the computer fatigue, that they don't have computers that are good enough to help them in the problem that we have. Of course, we have countries like Finland, India, and Jordan that have had very, very, very interesting approaches. Finland has opened the library, because a lot of universities have the online library, which have plenty resources like books, journals, and so on. But some countries, some universities weren't really there to adapt with the pandemic and all the online learning that happened, which is why Finland had opened the Library of Open Educational Resources to help students study, research, and not stop them from doing all their work. India has also provided an app named e-Pathshala from the 1 to the 12 multiple languages. This app has books, videos, audio to all the students in different languages, Urdu, Hindi, and English. And of course, another example would be Jordan, where they have Tawjihi, which is the 12th grade in Jordan. They have provided their students with TV channels on the TV itself. Instead of having songs and whatsoever, they have provided their students with extra sessions on the TV itself. And now, moving on to one of the most entertaining parts, how are Ministry of Education assessing the quality of delivery? Like as ministry, as government, we have to make sure that the universities that are accredited are providing good knowledge to their students. How can we make sure of that? Now, government haven't forced the universities to use a single way, and I'll be explaining in the next slides why. However, they are still assessing the performance of the universities by asking the experts, surveying the students, interviewing the students on how, please tell us your experience, how have your universities, how did the professors do? And this is actually a very interesting approach, because when they interview the students, when they interview the professors and ask for proof, oh, have you made discussions? Have you made any online engagements? And so on. Now, the reason governments haven't forced students to, haven't forced universities to go to different approaches, because if they made all the exams essay-based, this might lead to contract cheating. If they made all of the exams just put the question, answer, it may lead to students asking for assistance from different websites. Even in the remote exam cheating, students can cheat with having that ways, whether they put cheat sheets on the laptop or whatsoever. Also, another important ethical issue that happened, students of Abu Dhabi University have started a hashtag, no webcams, we don't want webcams. What if my mother passes? What if my brother is shirtless? And how will we deal with that? How can we move on? Like, it's all recorded at the end, but it's our family that are being violated in privacy. Now, when will schools reopen? As governments, we can't have one answer to that. Different governments have had different approaches, depending, of course, on the number of cases we have in all the countries and so on. Countries like UK have announced that they will fully be back in September, while other universities are still, in different universities, are still assessing and thinking, studying the decision. Now, schools in Dubai, for example, have announced that they will reopen, but with strict measurements, 1.5 meter distance, checking the body temperature, and of course, having your own stationery and devices. Now, I want to end it with the recommendations, or what, in my perspective, the government should have done more. Now, governments should work more on closing social media accounts and websites that assist students in cheating, because a lot of students, if the exam came in an essay form, they will start, I will just buy the assignment and get a full mark. Good me. No, but that's very bad, and it actually ruins us. So governments must put more effort in tackling these websites. And another thing is that when these people are being caught, they should be penalized. They should be forced to stop doing that, and they should know that they will be facing a lot of penalties, like whatever it is, you know, a small amount of jail, or because at the end of the day, it is a crime. Violating academic integrity and helping others is a crime. Here's my bibliography. And thank you all for listening.
Okay. All right. So wow, that's quite a bit of a challenge that you put up there, Nader. And I like that you've said that while the government did rely on the technology, at the same time there does seem to be a bit of a trust issue on the technology itself, where some governments have just said, okay, let's just pass all the students because we're not sure the technology is really going to be up to the mark. Okay, so with these three perspectives, I will now move to our expert panelists. We'll start with Dr. Anne Rogerson, as Vidhi has, of course, explained. Anne comes to us from Wollongong, Australia. She is the Associate Dean Education there. And of course, she is one of the leading experts on academic integrity in the world. So it's quite exciting to actually have her here and share her thoughts with us. So, Dr. Anne, the field is open for you.
Thanks, Zena. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having us here. It's very exciting to be part of this panel and to hear your thoughts. Really, some really interesting thoughts. I thought I might start with seeing some of the perspectives are there from UAE and comparing other countries. I'll tell you a couple of things that happened in Australia in relation to this. Yes, we had the shift to remote teaching like everyone around the world has done. But we started actually looking after our students in China when Australia closed its borders to China first at the end of January. And that occurred 2 days before we had our session orientation. So it was a really quick shift. We've been working some long hours. But one of the interesting things that came out of that was because of the firewalls in China, our students could not necessarily access our online teaching materials. And we also had to alter online teaching materials because they couldn't access YouTube. So what happened was some negotiations with an approved provider in China to set up a VPN network between China and Australia so our students could actually access their materials and continue studying. So the university has a VPN which every other student can use, but we have a dedicated one for China because that's all we could do to keep the students studying. So that's a different sort of government perspective and rules and how you have to work around. But that took 2 weeks to put in place. So some of these lag features, COVID's happened so quickly and rules have changed so quickly, it's caused some issues. Zenith asked me to talk about some of the background in assessment design. Well, I have academic qualifications in management and my thesis was on interpersonal communication. I also have a master's degree in higher ed. So I'm very interested in assessment design. And one of the things that I actually gave to my team in the faculty was we had so much to do. And I actually said, okay, apart from what we need to make for accreditation requirements, you have flexibility to actually try some different things. And it created a path of innovation that we did in a few months what would normally have taken years because it had to be approved and you test things to see how they go. So it's actually been a great catalyst for innovation in the assessment area, to the point at the end of our trimester 1 assessment committees, people said, I did this and it worked really well and the students liked it better, so I'm actually going to keep it. And so I see that's actually been a boon to assessment. In relation to Turnitin, I know that Turnitin itself had to do some adjustment because suddenly a lot more people were using online assessments. So the system wasn't processing information quite as quick as it normally did, and they've had a few outages. But I'll pick up on the comment about written assessment tasks and people outsourcing them to contract cheating companies. Some of my research, actually, there are patterns and clues you can actually pick up in the way contract cheating or some contract cheating providers actually deliver stuff. And there are certain errors and clues you can pick it up. But that's where I have to train academics on the other side in order to how to do that. Because once you know what you're looking for, you can see it. But it's not something that's necessarily intuitive. So that's created another thing of training going on. So educating staff in different ways has been a bit of a challenge. There was also a comment about the access to technology for students. We've also had some challenges for our students in in India, who've been under lockdown, and by internet, it's not a consistent internet, they'll buy a certain amount of use. And under lockdown, they haven't been able to get out and top up their devices or their internet access. And it's also meant their phones, they haven't even had access to their phones to be able to study. And that's been a particular challenge. From an Australian perspective, I think you'd be aware we had some pretty severe bushfires over the December-January period. And we have a string of campuses down the coast in some of the most severely affected areas. So again, we've had to lend equipment to students who actually still don't have houses, but they wanted to continue their studies. So we've been able to support them in that particular way. So it's been a very interesting time and still evolving. And I suppose my last point on technology and adaptation that we've had to do is, one, we make an assumption that everybody can use a keyboard, and not everybody necessarily can use a keyboard. They might have a handheld device and they might be very good on their phone or an iPad or something like that, but they don't necessarily type. So when we're looking at assessment design and we're expecting people to type information in a certain period, it's not necessarily that simple because people type at different speeds. But what we also found was we had to swap computer equipment between people, because for calculation-based subjects, and I realise I'm talking to engineering, primarily engineering students here, but we have accounting, finance and things, you use lots of calculations. So what we've actually had to do is swap systems between our staff so they could use the whiteboard facility on the Zoom or WebEx or things like that, because you can't necessarily type a calculation in or explain it. They needed a touch screen, and not all our computers were touchscreen. And these are all the little things that we've gradually been working and learning along the way. It's made it a challenging time, but probably back to my initial point, we have achieved so much innovation and so much change, so many changes to the way we're actually delivering and interacting with students, that it means that education going forward, even when we can get back to campus, is going to be a very, very different thing. So,
Right. Thank you so much, Anne, for that perspective. I think it's very interesting, and you've touched upon quite a few things. And we'll start off, of course, with the first example that you gave, where you said that you guys have had to actually think about then creating a whole VPN network just to support your students who are in a whole different country. So I think then government's roles play a very strong, they have a very strong role to play when it comes to ensuring, we want to believe that education is accessible and inclusive, because we want equal education for everyone, and at the same time quality education. But when you have geopolitical barriers, I think that has a huge impact regardless of whether you have the technology or not, right? What I would just like to ask though is, for instance, when you said that you guys are giving equipment to certain students, right? Because they may not have had access to certain equipment. Would you have faced situations where other students may have come and said that's not fair? Because if you're talking about fairness and you're a university, then you should give all of us a device to use.
okay, that's a really interesting question. So our student support services on campus, so I should say that we've got about 30,000 students in Australia, so it's quite a big campus and a good student body. Our student services division had been doing a lot of work with our students affected by bushfires over December, January. So they had actually started putting in place methods of, and I suppose in a medical term you call it triage, in contacting people to see what they need. But we're also aware from a student body what the students who need the most support in terms of physical equipment and possibly even financing are the ones we usually don't hear from. So the university actually made an active attempt to contact students, because we had their addresses and that, to check in and make sure that they were okay. But the university took referrals through our student support advisors. There was a mechanism where students could apply, but the university would go through and actually check to make sure that they met a certain level of criteria before that actually happened. It wasn't as widely taken up as we thought it would be, which was really quite surprising. But again, it came back to those points where the people who really needed it didn't. But we also found we set up a mechanism where some students could come to campus to undertake exams in those subjects where it was a Moodle hosted exam, because some people were either in shared housing, which meant that you couldn't get a quiet place to study, or that their internet speed at home or their technology at home was not at a speed where they thought they could actually do it. So, of course, we had to then put very strict health checking, recording, social distancing, clean down procedures in order to facilitate that. And that also extended to things like our library, where it had capacity based on the government regulations of social distancing. And where normally you could have hundreds of people in the library, in the beginning it was 100 and there was a queue at the door. Socially distanced, of course. So.
Okay, you mentioned how strong innovation has been in assessment areas, particularly because of the sudden focus on technology. Would you say that has enhanced or maybe challenged integrity of assessments to a certain degree?
It has, but it again comes back to the assessment design. So say for example, where normally there would be a mid-session test or an end-of-session exam that was a multiple choice question based examination, and it might have 30 or 40 questions, we were building question banks with randomisation. So the larger the bank with the randomisation meant even if you were sitting beside someone else or were connected to someone else over a gaming platform or something running in the background, the chances of you striking the same question with the answers in the same order was greatly reduced. And we found that that worked particularly well. It was effective, and the results at the end of session were comparable to previous sessions. So
That's amazing.
So doing a QA, quality assurance check on that, comparing results from session to session, it was comparable. So we were fairly comfortable with that result. On written-based assessments, I haven't used examinations for about 7 years. I've always had written assessment things. So, but as Zenith is explaining, academic integrity is one of my areas, so I'm fairly attuned to what to look for. Plus, I also tell my students I research in the area, so probably my class is not the one you want to try it in. So that was a new experience, but I found for academics who are using Turnitin, say for the first time because they'd switched from an exam to a written assessment, I had a few panic calls going, I'm not quite sure, is this okay or is this not okay? So, but thanks to our lovely technology, I was able to screen share with them, get them online and say, look, give me 15 minutes, let's dip into that class. I would actually look live into their class and was able to talk them through it. So they were getting hands-on training using their own things, which sets them up better for the future. So yeah, it's innovation has led to other things. Plus, we also trained some of our professional services staff now know how to set up multiple choice exams on Moodle. So they actually enjoyed learning a new skill.
Fantastic. So on that point, we'll move to our next panel speaker, Dr. Salim Razi. He's with us all the way from Turkey. Again, and heavyweight in academic integrity in the global arena. He's one of the founding members, board members of European Network for Academic Integrities, and he's written books and articles. And we're quite excited to have you here, particularly with your expertise in the area of training on academic writing. So, Dr. Salim. Sorry, maybe we just unmute you first.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you for that. And hi, all. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to meet you here. And thank you for the student presenters. The student presenters first focus the issue from student perspective, then teacher perspective, and then from the government perspective. I'm just going to follow a top-down approach here in my speech today. And I'd like to start with the government approach. As the government, I mean, in a global manner, of course, we need some common understanding regarding some perspectives, global perspectives of distance education or remote learning and teaching. But each government should have their own framework. And later institutions should develop their own framework by regarding on some needs analysis. This is also necessary for teachers. I mean, both teachers and institutions should develop their own methodology, considering their own cases, because the cases for university might be, it might be focusing on, for example, natural sciences. So the situation might be different at an institution where social studies have greater importance. So we need to take these differences into consideration. So we need frameworks, institutional and governmental frameworks, in addition to teacher frameworks. And I'd like to make this clarification regarding the use of terminology. Okay, we use remote learning or remote teaching, but we need to add emergency remote learning, because in the literature, we usually see this as distance education. However, we need to acknowledge that the principles of distance education is quite different than what we are doing today. What do we try to do? Okay, because of COVID issues, we try to maintain education facilities. This is an emergency case, and we try to do our best. So we know that it is not sufficient to educate, to fulfill all our expectations by doing this, but we try to do our best. So we need to agree on this. I mean, emergency remote teaching is different from distance education. Of course, we can benefit from and we can adapt the principles of distance education to our cases today. Here, I'm working at Faculty of Education, so I can see that teachers are playing a vital role in this transformation. Therefore, we need to prepare teachers for such situations, such emergency situations, and we need to train teachers who can benefit from technology. I see that sometimes, for example, some colleagues would like to discourage students from benefiting from technological devices in the classes. However, this is not acceptable. This is probably because of generation gaps. I mean, coming from X, Y, or Z generation or digital, consider, for example, students, teenagers are digital natives. So our understanding of technology or our use of technology might be different from these teenagers' use of technology. However, discouraging use of technological devices in the classroom does not work. We need to find ways in order how to encourage students to benefit from this technology. In Turkey, the government, Ministry of Education, has a project movement of enhancing opportunities and improving technology. This is called as Fatih project, and they have 5 that they acknowledge their accessibility, productivity, equal opportunity for everyone, measurability, and quality. The government has been working on this project for more than a decade, as far as I remember, and they already distributed tablets and computers to every student. However, this project did not help us very much in this emergency case. So what might be the failure in this? I mean, we have necessary hardware, but probably we don't have well-developed softwares. And secondly, teacher training. Probably teachers are not ready for such transformation. So what is important here? In-service teacher training and pre-service teacher training. Teachers who are working, who are regularly working, and who aim to become teachers, they need to be capable of some digital skills. In my classes, for example, I'm teaching academic writing and I try to benefit from technological devices, any software that I find valuable for my students. And I actually devote some of my time in the classroom to teach students how to benefit from these devices effectively while writing their papers. So as teachers, we need to find good samples and we need to encourage our students to benefit from these good samples. On the other hand, we also need to inform our students about the dangers, about the drawbacks that using technological devices may bring. For example, what happens if a student benefits from a paraphrasing tool? Is this a good way of writing the article? Finding the quoted expression, copying the quoted expression into the paraphrasing tool, and then asking the machine to paraphrase it for you, and then copy it and then paste it to your paper. Is this acceptable in terms of academic writing, in terms of academic integrity? So we need to work on this. Instead, for example, this is a weak sample. Instead, what do I do with my students? I encourage my students to benefit from corpuses, academic writing corpuses. So I encourage my students to work on corpuses in order to find synonyms for their paraphrase expressions, for example. So as teachers, we need to find reliable, safer ways of integrating into our curriculum. Otherwise, it would be problematic. And another problematic issue from teacher's perspective or from the manager's perspective, for example, especially regarding the use of text matching software. Once managers think that they have access to text matching software, let's say, for example, Turnitin here, okay, so has subscription to Turnitin, so they ask their students to submit the assignments through Turnitin. So plagiarism issue is solved. The managers or teachers might have some misconceptions. However, this is not the reality. I mean, these are just tools. As teachers, as managers, we have responsibilities. Also, students have some responsibilities, but we have some other responsibilities. In this way, we need to teach our students how to benefit from such text matching software in a better way to develop their academic writing skills. For example, such tools may provide revision assignments. So revision assignments, I consider this as a key component here because rather than adopting the principles of product approach, I follow the principles of process approach. So this gives importance to revision assignment submissions, and this is the key element in developing academic integrity in student writing, especially for first-year university students, because they are novice authors, and of course they will be making some mistakes. The important concept is not turning these mistakes into errors. Be careful, errors are systematic. So we try to prevent them from becoming systematic. Revision assignments are good examples. In addition, also peer review facility contributes a lot, encouraging students to help each other. And also, once we ask our students to help each other, they will become better skills. They will have better skills in terms of self-regulation and metacognition. This will also help them better learners and develop better skills. For my classes, I don't deliver any exams. I just ask my students to write papers, to submit their papers, and to provide peer feedback. However, what I make different from the others is I do not score my students merely depending on their writing assignments. I take the feedback quality into consideration. For example, when I ask my student to deliver the feedback, I give the criteria. Okay, you will be focusing on blah 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 while you're providing feedback, and please do this blah blah. I give the rubric, for example, and give detailed description of the task, and then ask the student to give the feedback. Once the student finishes giving the feedback, I evaluate his skills or her skills in delivering the feedback. So, is the feedback misleading? The feedback correct? Is the feedback contributing to the student author to develop his or her paper? And then I also score the quality of the feedback, and then I combine this with the writing assignment, and then have a cumulative score. This works properly even in emergency cases. So I didn't change the methodology of my teaching, and I didn't change the methodology of my assignment due to the outbreak of the COVID issues. Okay.
Wow, that's amazing. I think that also gives us a little bit of a glimpse into your, the way you teach. And I think that's very interesting because what you said earlier was that whole generation gap that actually exists is sometimes between teachers and students, particularly when it comes to technology. So we may have the technology which is ready to support us, and you're absolutely right. We are saying remote learning, but it's really emergency distance learning that we are actually all in the mode of, right? And so we may have that technology, but because there may be that pushback from some teachers, would you say that that would lead to an inequality in the process of learning for some students if we do have that kind of pushback from teachers?
Oh, of course, if you are talking about emergency cases, sure, there might be inequality because not all students have equal opportunities. Some are living in city centers, some are living with their families in very small towns or even villages without access to internet or without having their own PCs or even mobiles, for example, in some countries. So our assumption is that okay, we try to provide the framework by considering the situation for developed countries. But what happens in developing countries? What happens in underdeveloped countries? I mean, we should give the importance to developing countries and underdeveloped countries. Otherwise, we won't be able to provide equal opportunities. So we shouldn't focus merely on the internet technology. We have better options, as they did in India. You told or Bangladesh, they benefited from radio. In Turkey, for example, Ministry of National Education, they have TV channels, and they are at K-12 level. They try to maintain emergency remote teaching by using the TV channels, because more students will have access to TV. So it means that in terms of equal opportunities, this is a fair approach. However, if we merely depend on internet technology, this may not be fair for some students.
Fantastic. You also mentioned how it's very crucial to ensure that teachers are trained, even if it is an emergency distance learning mode, that teachers are trained. Now, if teachers are not able to grasp the assessment dimension of how, like how you said, you know, because you focus more on the writing and students submitting and then doing peer evaluation. So if a teacher is not able to do all of that and they just give random MCQs and the same questions, they recycle some of the questions, and then you see an like a, you know, like a shoot up of the number of cases of maybe plagiarism or exam cheating among students. Would you solely then say it's still the you know the majority of the blame still lies with the students, or would then in situations like this the teachers also shoulder some of the responsibility?
Of course, teachers should shoulder. They are making their lives by means of education. So if this is their job, then it means that they have to shoulder this responsibility. They cannot have such excuses. Okay, I don't know how to benefit from technology. But before we accuse teachers, managers should provide in-service teacher training for these teachers. Otherwise, they might have such excuses. So we need to train them, and then they will have no excuses. If they agree to do it, they do it. If they don't, then they leave.
Right, exactly as Anne said, that it was literally an in class, in a very hands-on training that's been happening. So thank you so much, Salim, for that insight. We move on to our last speaker of last panelist, Jared Dyer. He comes to us from USA. And like I said, I cannot believe he's still awake and active. Thank you so much, Jared, for joining us. It's what, almost 4 o'clock, 4 a.m.
4:37 a.m. And I want to thank all of you for allowing me to go last, as that's given me about an hour to wake up and for the caffeine to settle in. The lighting hasn't improved much. It still looks like I'm in a cave, but we will do best. But no, thank you very much to the students who had very well defined and clearly articulated. I'm starting to sweat over here a little bit after listening to all the great info that's come out. And thank you to both the previous experts that have gone before me. Again, I'm sweating even more now and down to my toes. But I want to take kind of a different perspective. My world really relies in the testing industry, and for my bio, it's been quite a long time now. And what fascinated me about all of this, and to use Dr. Salim's response, is that we, you know, in this emergency maintenance that we tried to do across educational platforms, we tried just to take a rubber stamp of an in-person testing center where a faculty member would come down, have a conversation with the testing professional, be like, here's my exam. I would like you to deliver this next week. Please check their ID when they come in. And we had really, what's fascinating to me, all of like the same technologies in place, but I think in many ways they were hidden from the student's perspective. So let's start there. So a student would come in and they were being videoed the entire time. We were checking IDs the entire time. We were having these conversations with them the entire time. And we just tried to take that and say, okay, now you're going to invite us into your home and we're going to do all the same thing. And the students were like, well, you could look at my hair and my makeup when I was there in person because I prepared for that. And now that, you know, I'm inviting you into my home through this tiny little piece of technology, the entire conversation's changed. So I think initially when we were maintaining at the end of the spring semester, what we now have learned, that if unfortunately this ever happened again, there was a bit of a communication breakdown because a lot of what we did with the technology didn't change a whole lot, but the way that we communicated it, right? When you sit down as a student and you're in your syllabus and you're walking into a testing center, you're expecting to be videoed and that they're going to save that for 30 days because it's posted, it's communicated, it's talked about. When you sit down at your home PC and the webcam light pops on, there's not a lot of communication immediately that I'm recording you. It's going to be saved for 30 days, and I could potentially be using this if a academic integrity, a need for a review comes up. And so the conversation changed. Let me go back and kind of look at a very interesting historical perspective of online testing, and that is when this, let's go back to March. In March, there were no standards for online remote proctoring globally. And you can blame me for that because we started them, we haven't finished them. We had articulated in a previous work that I had contributed to that there are differences in the way the technology uses, and those are clearly articulated. There is online proctoring. And the definition of that is the ability to view, intervene, and to mitigate the loss of any faculty member, institution, or credentialing body's intellectual property. So I would actually ideally be sitting here, and the proctor would be looking at you, and we'd wave at each other. We'd hold up an ID, and we'd have this whole verbal or nonverbal communication. And if we saw that, a screen was particularly dark, or if you kept looking down here or looking over here, stop the exam, and we could mitigate any further loss of intellectual property if someone was taking a picture, if someone was sharing it online using any social media, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what happened? 1.5 billion students decided or were informed that within about a week's time that they were switching online. So we went from technology providers who had a couple hundred people looking at students, because that was the need at the time, to not having 1.5 billion proctors looking at students at the time. And now remember, that's a piece of the pie, right? We've been talking about students right now. Those technology providers, those online proctoring solutions, for the most part, we're working in the certification, the credentialing business side, so the corporate side. And so they were sharing these people, or they had been using all of these proctors for, Cisco's and CompTIA's and any other large certification program. They were using the same live proctors, right?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, all of these students also needed to be live proctored, because we believe from the higher education space that we needed to maintain. Well, what happened? Literally within 48 hours, we went from having live proctors available, which is an acceptable form of proctoring, to every service provider scaling back and saying, I'm sorry, the only thing that we have now is either record or record and review, which is what I'll talk about in a second. Record is exactly what it seems. It's not proctoring, right? It's video surveillance. Really is. So you take a picture of somebody for 2 hours and you pray to God that nothing happened. If an academic integrity incident arises, it's on the faculty's shoulders or the dean's shoulders to go back and watch 2 hours of tape to see if you happen to pull out this little piece of, come on now. Okay, so it didn't happen, right? So AI went right out the window. People were getting away with everything. So then they said, well, we can do record and review, which is fascinating, because there's great, people can debate whether it's artificial intelligence, machine learning, somewhere in between, or hybrid, but it will recognize body language, right? So if I do this, if all of a sudden you see some screen glare from my phone, if I just start taking a picture, like some of you have been taking pictures, that's fantastic. The computer would recognize that. And then, if you can imagine a YouTube video, there would be little red flags or yellow flags that would pop up over this 2-hour exam, which was fully recorded. And the benefit of that is that as a faculty member, as a dean or somebody else, you can go back the next day and be like, oh, at 2 minutes and 45 seconds, there's something. Let me click on that. Just imagine this on a Monday morning with how many students are in this class, Dr. Zena?
My class is lucky. This one is small. We've got 35, but my other subject has 130. So
yes. Could you imagine a Monday morning for Dr. Zenith with 132-hour videos with little red flags in that? Well, you know how that would go.
Oh my.
So you have to go back and you have to look and like pull out the flag and then spend 25 minutes being like, is that a phone? I have no idea what I'm looking at right now. So that kind of went out the window. And so all of a sudden, what we thought we were maintaining right in the beginning, or at the end of the spring semester, the beginning of all of this, we realized the technology was available. The technology was fantastic. It was doing all this stuff. We had all these inputs coming in, and it completely failed. Like, to be perfectly honest, it completely failed. There was this semblance of maintaining in an emergency situation. And then, so what happened? In many areas, it continued, right? It continued that way, especially in universities that had pre-existing relationships with any of these big companies, ProctorU, Proctorio, et cetera. And so they were able to kind of sift through the weeds, provide internal training, et cetera. But elsewhere, it didn't, because it suddenly started presenting more frustration, right? We originally we were talking about how it should be easy to use. I believe, Rand, you had talked about how, you know, we all thought that from the faculty perspective, it should be easy to use, right? Well, when you suddenly have 4 different websites to go through just to proctor an exam, it's not easy to use. And if you have to suddenly come up and you call your IT team to do an integration to your learning management system. So what happened? Faculty rejected it. And so then they decided that they were going to proctor 35 students using Zoom by themselves, to which in the industry we pivoted and started using testing centers on campuses and their staff to help proctor Zoom tests for students, because there are students. And now it's a free option, where it's very expensive before, ranging anywhere from $5 to $18 per test per student. So you can see that scales very quickly. And so we moved down that road. Well, what's the problem we found out with Zoom? What are the problems then? If you've used Zoom or a similar tool, you now do a 2-hour recorded video where the student's testing session has to be saved to someone's personal home computer system. What kind of privacy issues does that bring up from a student perspective, right? From a governmental perspective, even from a university perspective. Whereas before we were shipping it off to a third-party proctor, at least they had some cloud storage that had been improved, et cetera, et cetera. Suddenly you're having testing professionals worldwide saving 2 hours of video to their home PCs and then hoping that they can share it later. That also becomes a privacy violation for staff and faculty that are engaging in it, right? Because unfortunately, if you're working for a higher ed education system and a lawyer needs that videotape, the university reserves the right in a lot of schools in the United States, at least, to take your home PC and take it to court. I don't want my home PC to go to court. Nobody's business. My banking information. Like, you want your home PC or your cell phone even to be sequestered for 2 months? No. So it became another privacy issue that we had to slowly work around to kind of go forward to ensure the safety and the privacy of all users, right? The students, the faculty, the administrators, et cetera, et cetera. So what's next? It's going to be a very, very, very interesting conversation. Well, it is right now, right in the summer semester here, but as we move into fall, as we begin now to be strategic about leveraging the technology that we have in an appropriate way, that there is fair assessment, right? Let's go back to why we have assessments to begin with. It's really, at the end of the day, to level the playing field. There should be nobody on this call right now that has some unfair advantage over another student because they have access to an unauthorized aid during an assessment session, right? I mean, that's why we had standardized proctoring, like going back eon. So the outcomes then need to be looked at from the spring, now from the summer, to redevelop. And you know, this is a great ongoing conversation. Dr. Zena and I have talked about this throughout the summer. Like, what are the holes in the current global online proctoring scenario, and can they be plugged? What can we do to develop right now? Because this one, and I'm sure you probably read a lot, this hit and dollar signs just flew in everyone's heads. It's like, we're gonna make so much money off of proctoring. Well, okay, is that the right approach? I mean, university, it costs enough money in most countries as it is. Let's not continue to take 5, 10, 15 US dollars, kind of across the board from individuals just so that they can take a fair assessment. So this is an ongoing. I can tell you now, looking forward, that standards will most likely be published between my organization, National College Testing Association, and the Association of Test Publishers. So it's the higher ed side, and then the credential corporate side, kind of coming together to work on a project that says we're going to have standards for proctoring, which as I kind of defined before, and monitoring, which is using video to store sessions in the eventuality that there might be a reason to look at them in the future. Those should be done for August, but the rest of the questions they're still analyzing, we're still looking at, because you've all brought up very good, very valid points. Communication is going to be key, and I think the last part that's really been very informative with this entire conversation, I love it because I'm going to use this example, right? So you start off with these great little bullet points, and they're key, and it's like you look at the bullet point like, yes, that's exactly what we're expecting to get out of this entire next 3-month scenario with online proctoring. And then you start to scratch away day one. You're like, well, they promised this isn't happening. And then day 3, you're like, well, this student brought a cell phone in. They said that wouldn't happen. And then day 4, wait, this student cheated in my class last semester. I caught them in person. They're trying to do it again. They just got away with it. And so the promise isn't always as good as the reality. So we now need to, as a case study, 20 years from now, when people look back at this time and what did we as a society, what did we as a global society come out with? It says when we're faced with any emergency situation, that we will have systems in place to go from maintaining to analyzing within a 24 to 48 hour period, as opposed to a 6-month period. That's kind of what we found with this scenario. So we're going to stop there and open it up to questions. Thank you all very much.
Oh, wow. I think that was brilliant. I will start right at the beginning. What you said was so interesting. We talk about, oh, yes, technology, remote learning, distance learning, emergency learning, and technology. But you're right. We've had this technology before. Of course, for a lot of us, it's kind of pushed us to a corner where we couldn't say no anymore to using the technology. But for a lot, it's already been in use and it was already there. Particularly, like you said, the example of using, online proctoring softwares. Those universities that were using it have been using it, and students have been giving access and doing all of those things. And yet all of a sudden, just because now it was because it's a pandemic, because everything was new, this suddenly also became new. Right. And then it gave rise to those whole questions of, privacy. Another, I think, brought up the example of even here in the UAE, one of the university students, they had this whole hashtag of no webcams. And, it kind of took on a lot. And, a lot of the students then chimed in and said, yes, we definitely do not want to use webcams when we are sitting in class, because at one point it was also said that it would be compulsory for students to do that if the teachers asked, because right now I've been constantly keeping an eye, for instance, on my list to see if there's any unwanted person in there, somebody that I don't recognize, and I've actually had to move 2 people to the lobby because I don't recognize fireflies. Who's fireflies? So things like that. So yeah, if it was a physical classroom and somebody walked in and we didn't recognize them, we would ask them to leave, right? But when it is an online platform, suddenly we need that webcam to be on. We need that mic to be working so that we can keep the integrity of the class intact, right? So, and you said that expectation, why do you think that expectation from students changed? That's a very interesting thing. I will ask you, and I will ask the students as well who are in the panel to see what they think. But I would like to ask you that first. Like, why do you think the expectation of students changed? Just because now we're on the online platform?
It is an excellent question. And actually, I'd love to hear from the student's perspective as well. I can tell you, and it's interesting you said that from a proctoring perspective, we prefer not to use webcams as well. The things that have been seen in the last 6 months never need to be seen. And I think that lies in it right there, right? This is my sanctuary, right? I'm at home. So if I'm going to sit down and take a test here, there's a part of my brain that says, this is my domain. I'm going to do it how I want to do it. And I'm going to take the test the way that I want to. And if that means that I'm sitting here in, flannel pajamas, then that's how I want to do it, because this is my space. And so then if you're looking at me, it feels like a violation. It really does. When I walk into a testing center, I'm like understanding. By entering the testing center, there's a different part of my brain inactivated that I am engaging in an activity in that area, and I'm walking into their space. So I think that has a lot to do with it. But also, and I'm really glad you brought that up, and I'm sure everyone else could kind of agree. One of the difficult things, what I think you have done a beautiful job about, is that I see everyone's names here, and I'm pretty sure they're probably all their names, right? I don't know your students, but what we've really been challenged with kind of globally is Firefly. So even if it's your own students, is that students will walk in and either they're sharing a Zoom account with their child, they have, they have a screen name or something, and you're trying to get this idea of this assessment. You're like, I don't know what grade to give Firefly because I don't know who Firefly is. So so bringing, again, all the technology is beautiful if it could actually think for us when it was communicating to each other, but it doesn't, right? And there's always those little gaps, and so that does, present a lot of that challenge. So, but I'd love to hear, can the students jump in?
Yeah,
like what?
Let's just jump in and ask Ryan. We'll start with Ryan. What do you think, Ryan? Why do you think the expectation of students have changed?
So I think opening the webcam as a student is very stressful. I'll be honest with you. I mean, it's not me personally, but based on my conversations with quite a lot of friends, they think it's an invasion of privacy. Some, especially Arab girls these days, they like, they're very conservative, or maybe based on their culture, based on their traditions and society's more values. They don't want their pictures. They don't want to be out there and exposing their face or to their to their classmates. So it's just, I think it's more of societies and culture values, for some people that I may know. Yeah,
that's interesting. Nader, what about you?
Honestly, I can't relate at all because all of my classes were it's going Dr. Anne and Dr. Salim style, where they're only essay based. So I didn't actually attend any class where I had to open my camera. But of course, I understand Ryan's points where it's privacy at the end, and it's somehow irritating for the students who were asked to open their cameras. But I'm very happy that I didn't experience that. Plus, I love writing. I'm a media student major, so that didn't make any difference to me, honestly.
Okay, Jatma, how about yourself?
I also agree with Ryan, but in the exams luckily I didn't have to, but my friends had to open their webcams and the comments are like, oh my God, in that 5 minutes, I wasn't able to write anything. So like all of those kind of comments where like the students obviously feel stressed about opening their webcams because as Dr. Gerard said, we are in our comforts of our own homes and we're not ready to share our surroundings with everyone. So that's what I feel.
yeah, I feel like it's a stressful moment for us when someone is watching us constantly. It's like I'm doing an exam and someone is right behind me creeping on my answers. I can't just focus on that.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting psyche, because even in a classroom, like the moment you call out a particular student, they're like on the spotlight, and suddenly like they feel very uncomfortable. But as long as they were like merging with like the rest of the class, they were kind of like blanketed away from that, that focus. And I think a lot of times that happens when you ask them to actually switch on the webcam. So Jared, just going back. Yeah.
No, I do want to, there was a comment in the chat, so it also happens when exams are done on campus. And yes, thank you for bringing that up, because exam stress is actually one of the largest areas of training that we do with our staff. But what's very interesting, and I'm glad that I was bringing it up, is we all know when we're in person, we can tell when somebody's like kind of stressed out. Their breathing is a little bit more erratic. And they can't find their key. Everybody knows where the key is. They just lock up their cell phone. They know where their cell phone is. They know where their key is. When you've been distilled down to a 1.5 by 2 inch square, the nonverbal cues are not as clear. It's much more difficult to be able to read and engage in students' anxiety in this remote platform. The next thing that I also wanted to say, and Rayanne, thank you for bringing this up. And you mentioned something about cell phones, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you're on a cell phone, correct? You're currently using a cell phone?
Yeah. Yes, I'm currently using my cell phone.
So what I would be a great research project coming out of this is actually looking at people's privacy as it relates to their intimacy with their device. And what I mean by that is students that are sitting at, okay, so currently I have 3 screens here. It's very office-like. I feel no intimacy with myself, okay? There's a monitor, a laptop, I got a webcam. I have no problems with you. However, when you take this particular conversation and you move it to something that we're much more intimate with, from here to a tablet, from a tablet to a cell phone, I would bet across the board we would see people's levels of stress and anxiety doing any privacy violating activity on a cell phone would be much higher than it would be on a PC, a desktop, or something of that nature. And so we see that also with testing. So one of the ways that we've had to do it, again, Ray, I'm saying some things here. Well, it's funny you said that, because literally what we've started to do, because the webcam wasn't enough, is we have students take a cell phone with Zoom and place it where we can see their keyboard and we can see their screen, because these are the 2 biggest areas where things are hidden and where they're opening and closing if there's not a lockdown browser, etc. So we're literally sitting on their shoulders, freaking them out. That causes a level of stress, but from an academic integrity perspective, a test security perspective, it's the best angle to see things. So more research to be done.
Right. That's so, I think that was going to be my question to you, like, where do we draw that line between respecting the students' privacy and ensuring the integrity of assessments? So this, I will just flip back to Dr. Anne for, to see what your thoughts are. Anne?
Thanks, Senna. Some really interesting discussion and comments. I am a big advocate for correct assessment design. I think Salim was talking about how some questions get recycled, that some people don't change their questions from session to session. And that actually contributes to the problem rather than actually solves it. So if you are designing an assessment that students can engage with that has some sort of level of practical application, I won't say every student, but a lot of other students will engage with it. So some of the questions, my area is organisational behaviour and leadership. So I would set assessment tasks related to a current issue at our Fair Work Commission. Very difficult for a contract cheating company to replicate, and they don't use examples. They tend to write very generic responses. They can talk about theory, but they don't actually have application and examples. So by making that some of the criteria, one, that's one way I can tell, where things are coming from. But it's also supporting the student through the process. Like, I'm a big believer in exemplars. But because of what some students have done in trading environments, I've actually had to watermark, put disclaimers on the front of them to say that I'm providing this here to help you. And I annotate it but it's not for reuse, sale, you know, exposure, upload, download, do whatever you like with it. It is there to help you. And when I run through students with it, they sort of go, okay, I get it, and I respect that. So it's trying to teach them ethical and judgment skills. But it also gives me, because I actually write the assignment, so I'm not even getting an exemplar from someone. I'm actually physically writing the assignment.
Writing it.
So
Yeah.
I can actually say to the students, hey, I've done it, and I've done 2 alternate introductions that are annotated to show you 2 different ways you can approach it. Now it's written. So they can't even sort of say, well, I can't do this, or I don't know what it looks like, because I find with assessment tasks, if we don't explain what something looks like well enough,
Yeah.
or provide an example of how it looks, that's when people dive on the internet to say,
Right.
well, what does a report like this look like? And unfortunately, those sort of searches lead them towards contract cheating sites. The moment you start
Yeah.
putting a question on there, then there are all these little bots and trolls that go out there and try and find it. So my assessment tasks are designed, the questions are designed effectively, but the support materials and mechanisms are provided to students to show them what it looks like. But I've actually gone through and shown them how to break up the word limit into how it's going to look and what sort of things going to be there. That then complemented by a marking rubric. I've given not just an assessment, but I've given all the tools so that the students can focus on the content. They can show me what they've learned, and that's what it's about at the end of the day.
Awesome. We'll jump to Salim. Same comment. What do you think when it comes to this, finding this balance between privacy and, of course, upholding academic integrity? Sorry, should we just try?
We need to take students' privacy into consideration when it comes to assessment. But before we talk about assessment or testing, if you like, we need to question the aim of testing. Why do we deliver tests? What is the aim of delivering the test? So as teachers, we deliver the test in order to see whether the students are capable of some skills that we are teaching. I mean, they are meeting our expectations. Do they develop outcomes or outputs, whatever you call? So if the testing merely focuses on testing or revealing declarative knowledge, then this involves cheating in a way or memorizing. So this wouldn't work. I mean, testing should include, in addition to declarative knowledge, should include conditional knowledge and procedural knowledge. It means that students should know how to use, when to use, why to use this information in real life circumstances, in real contexts. So rather than asking the questions, assignments, writing assignments or project works seem to be more appropriate in this context. And in this way, I believe that we can also protect the privacy of our students. Otherwise, simply asking the students to answer the questions and then depending merely on proctoring tools seem to be problematic. I mean, problematic from both sides. I mean, we cannot prevent it to 100%. We are never sure about what happens in the room because we are away from there. And secondly, it will be problematic from the students' perspectives. As you see in the chat box, almost all students worry about being recorded, especially during the examination. So it means that testing under such circumstances will include some bias. Yes. We will not report the actual cases, actual situation of the students. Therefore, rather than examination, we need to turn our testing in a more productive way. I see, and we need to take the whole process into consideration. That's why I focus on revision assignments.
Yes.
We need to enable revision assignments. We need to enable and encourage teacher feedback in addition to peer feedback. However, throughout the semester, teachers need to provide feedback to students. Therefore, teachers will be able to use this information as evidence at the end of the semester against contract cheating. Okay, suppose, for example, one of my students comes with a draft. I give feedback, ask my student to do something, and later I see that in the revised assignment, none of my suggestions were taken into considerations. Or at the end of the semester, the student comes with a perfect assignment. However, I provided no feedback. So this will bring concerns regarding contract cheating. So revision assignments, in addition to teacher feedback, seem to be helping us design better exam testing situations.
Yeah. So what I'm really hearing from all of you is that we need to be more proactive rather than just depend on the technology to do our job. Like, even if it's about integrity of the assessment, it still comes back to us as the teachers and facilitators to ensure that we've got that going, that expectation with students. So with this, I would like to move to our Q&A session. Vidhi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I want to thank everyone for a highly engaging session. There's a session happening here on WebEx. There's one happening with the audience on the chat. Very interesting to read. And we also have question and answers that have been posted on our ReBitVlogs Twitter account. Let me just share the screen and see how actively engaged the students have been today. Okay, so we have one question from Hanif. Can we expect that the teaching methods and strategies adopted because of the pandemic will change the way teaching and assessments are carried out offline?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'll say yes to that. On
Yeah.
the experiences I've had and the feedback from the academics. So, for example, in finance, and this is where it will probably relate to some engineering students. Some of the finance calculations, they've actually said their tutorials are more successful because with the more difficult concepts, students could replay that until they actually could get it right. So that's a unique opportunity where you might get missed in class. So I think that is going to do it. One thing I know I'm personally going to continue, I teach literature review to PhD students and their grades are out next week. But one of the things I did in switching the teaching to off campus was we had a 1 hour drop in every week and whoever wanted to drop in could drop in. And then we had another session that was more around teaching and learning. And the students said that was just so useful to connect because when they were working at home, they didn't know what they were doing. And I thought, actually, that's something I'm going to continue regardless of whether we're on campus or not, because it was a way of connecting, but it wasn't a big imposition. Oh, I've got to go to campus for an hour and integrate. I could actually go, yeah, I've got an hour at the moment. That would be nice. I can still sit there and have a cup of tea and share ideas and create communities. So I think there are a number of things that just in the initial phase, besides the experimentation, innovation and assessment design and also deliver it. So I think it's going to continue.
Yeah, that's interesting. Salim, what do you think? Sorry, let me just unmute you. Okay.
If you can repeat the question, please.
Vidhi?
Yeah, sure. So the question was, can we expect that the teaching methods and strategies that have been adopted because of the pandemic, will these strategies change the way teaching and assessments are carried out offline?
Okay, of course, as I said previously, there are some principles, essential principles of distance education, and for effective distance education situation, we need to follow these principles. However, under these emergency situations, unfortunately, it was impossible for us to meet all these situations. However, the spring semester was an emergency case, but my prediction is that for the next semester, we will need to maintain this type of education, at least blended teaching, and maybe some essential hours will be spent in the classroom, face to face with students, but some others will be online. But of course, we are learning from the situation. So what do we do? We have some experience from this semester, and we have some other principles coming from distance education. So we are trying to combine them for more effective classes. I mean, for example, let's say teaching academic writing. Is it possible to maintain this via online classes? Yes, I could do this. However, the question is it more effective when we have the classes face to face? What is the answer? My answer is, unfortunately, face to face education cannot be replaced with distance learning or emergency remote teaching. So in a way, we will need to find ways meeting face to face with our students. Maybe we won't be able to do this next semester, but hopefully when all things are over, then we will need to do this. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't take distance education into consideration. Instead, we are learning how to make distance education more effective. So blended learning seems to be more important for the future. For example, towards the end of 2020s, probably we will see that universities, almost all universities, are changed their methodology to blended learning, not completely remote teaching, but blended learning, to my expectation.
And I think here it's important also what Jared said, that they are bringing in new policies and procedures and governance, but there is still a lot to understand and grow from once I think we are out of this pandemic, when everybody is a little bit more sane, perhaps, to go back and then reflect on what worked and what didn't, and what can we take forward and what we shouldn't. Okay, Vidhi, next question.
Yeah, so the next question is from Pamir. He wants to know, how can governments and universities enhance the remote teaching experience using the existing resources?
Okay, so maybe we start with Jared for this one.
I think it's a great question, and I think I'm going to answer that in a roundabout kind of way. What we have learned, I think, from this, is we don't have all the existing resources. And if we went back to the beginning of March, I would tell you that resources for higher education institutions didn't include a lot of what we're now using. So I would say, to Dr. Salim's point, by the end of the 2020s, what we are going to find, even just from all these great conversations you're having here, just within this class, is that things don't work for everyone. there's not a one size fits all. So to answer the last question, and then to add with this question is we're going to see a portfolio offering like we haven't seen in the past. And that's going to be for my learning style, that I work better and the outcomes have shown that I am learning more if I perhaps have an in-person class, but I take my assessments remotely. Or I have the distance learning, the hybrid model works for me, but really, I don't focus well when I'm at home. So I need to put my pants, my shoes, and my hat on, go into the testing center because I focus on the assessment. I don't have my dog barking and I don't have this, that. So the portfolio is going to continue to expand. And if we've all seen, tech companies coming and going, we will see new technologies that will be able to assist with a lot of these gaps that we are seeing as we go forward.
Awesome. Vidhi, next question.
Yeah. The next question is by Victor. How do we handle the situation of the increasing rate of cheating since classes have moved online? What are your thoughts on solutions that can mitigate this problem?
So here, I will break this up into two. I will first go to the students. Do you think cheating has increased exponentially now that we are in more?
No doubt, doctor.
Because as teachers, we always want to hope that it's not happening. But I know it's wishful thinking. But what do you guys think, Jasma?
Well, I'm sorry to make you sad, but it is happening.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, I mean, I have my own website where I publish essays that I like or rappers that are areas of interest to me. And after doing that, I've realized that some students were actually thinking that I am marketing myself so I can write essays. So it's very unfortunate because, as Dr. Ann said in the comment section, writing essays is also more relevant to the real world. I mean, if you actually just memorize certain definitions and put them in the paper sheet and then leave the class, as soon as you leave the exam hall, all of these things will be leaving your mind. But when you write an essay, 500, 1,000, 2,000, depending on the course, it actually stuck in your head. But unfortunately, students are not being able to adapt this, and they just think of buying it simply because it's easier for them. So,
Yes, Ren?
Yeah, adding to him, most of our courses are in open book exams. So it's not really cheating, doctor. So we are referring to our books, to our lectures, tutorials. So we can refer. So it's not really necessarily cheating because we're referring to our notes.
Yes, doctor. Like we were told that we could use open book platforms as well during this time's finals, for most of it at least.
Okay, so this is where I'll move to actually the experts and maybe start with Anne. Give us this understanding. So if it's open book and students are referring, where are we drawing the line on calling something cheating and not cheating?
I think the students have raised a really good point about open book exams. If we're expecting people to refer to the material we're giving for training purposes, then that's certainly not cheating because we've facilitated that and set it up in that particular way. But then it comes back then to the way we design the assessment task and what we're actually asking students to do. If we're taking a lazy approach and just asking questions out of the textbook, we're going to get regurgitated. Someone's going to download the instructor's guide, which we all know they're available on the internet, and just take that answer and pop it in. But if we're teaching practical application, or a couple of, we've worked with a couple of our publishers who, in sharing some of their material, them had a very sophisticated design of randomization. So every student, and I mentioned in the chat, one of our first year subjects, 650 students. and they had an online facilitated final assessment, but it was through the textbook tool, and the textbook tool changed the numbers for every single student. So when the students were doing the calculation, no two students were going to get the same answer because it was different numbers. So that's randomization at its extreme end. But we have picked up cases where, and engineering at home, I know we've talked about a couple of things, where students were sharing off a particular site because they all got the same wrong answer, and then you could actually trace it back. And so they have been picked up, they have been spoken to, and been processed through the system. So there is cheating going on, but the thing is, even when we're on campus, there's cheating going on, and we know there's cheating going on in the exams room and stuff. It's about being aware of what students are doing. I'd say some people are becoming more sophisticated about it, but then again, we've got more sophisticated ways of actually tracking some of that through IP addresses and things, and where students are actually hitting systems. The same as if someone's internet dropped, we can actually tell in Moodle that the internet's dropped or that there's been a disconnection. But some of that will be educating our academics more on the ways that they can validate things more easily. And where there is a cause for concern, and this is where my approach is, if something doesn't look right, I have a conversation with a student to work out, because I use the phrase smells. If it smells a bit suspicious, usually there's something there. And it necessitates a conversation. So it may turn out to be some form of cheating, in which I'll go down one track, but other ones it might be actually having a conversation with a student so that they have a better understanding how they're actually hurting themselves by taking that sort of path. And the message I say to people is, if you go into a workplace, you might have cheated your way to get through a degree. But when you go into a workplace and your boss asks you to do something and you can't do it, you're going to lose your job. So why not learn in my class how to do it? So when the boss asks you the question, you can. And teaching some of those, understanding the why, rather than just, oh, well, it's about getting a grade and getting a piece of paper so I can get a job. If you don't know the stuff and you don't know the mechanism and the approach,
we are almost running out of time. So, Salim, 30 seconds. Any last thoughts that you'd like to add to the discussion?
Okay, very good point by Anne. I'd like to say that we are not torturing, at least we do not aim to torture our students when we deliver exam. What do we try to do? We try to prepare them for some skills that they have in order to maintain their jobs. So the tasks, the exams, the tests should be reflecting this principle. I mean, as teachers, we are responsible for preparing valid and reliable exams, and as students, they are responsible for following academic integrity principles in delivering and submitting their assignments and exams. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jared. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. So thank you all. I mean, this has been incredibly entertaining. I've loved watching all of the chat here. I think what is going to be very interesting in the next few years is an understanding globally, as we like I said, offer this portfolio of options of how we interact with all of the material. I love using the example because people, we have these academic integrity conversations with students because they just don't believe what they're doing is always cheating. It's sharing. Like, we live in this society, stuff is shared, right? And I love to tell students, I said, well, it's fascinating. If you take one of the most famous photographers of all time, and you walk into a art studio and you see this beautiful, physical, tangible piece of work on the art, and it costs $10,000 US. People are like, yeah, I get it. That's cool. Then you take out your phone and you show them the same exact picture, and they're like, oh, can you send that to me? It's beautiful. I want it for my screensaver. I want it for my backdrop. And we have this very visceral, different understanding of something that's digital and something that's physical. And so as we've been forced to migrate education completely into a digital online space, we've seen cheating and we've seen perceptions of cheating very much change because it's sharing now. It's communicating, it's helping. Whereas before in the classroom, this cheat sheet piece of paper stuck in my arm was naughty. It really was. However, now online that I have two screens and then, my friend's texting me the answers to the test, he's not really giving me the answers. We're helping each other a lot. So the conversations are gonna have to continue to change as this portfolio of options is available. So I think that's gonna be our biggest challenge.
So with that, we actually conclude. Thank you so much to Anne, Salim, and Jared for taking the time out and joining us. And of course, to the students for coming here with your host of information and your, questions and your perspectives. I think it's been an amazing session. It's one of those topics we could keep talking for the next 5 hours, but unfortunately we can't. We are constrained by time. Just very quickly, I don't know if Vidhi, you're able to share the certificates or should I?
Yes. No, I'll share it.
Perfect. So we do have certificates. We will email them to all our speakers and of course the winning teams. So a round of applause to everyone. What we would like to do, of course, is also take a group shot of all the speakers and then of everybody who is attending, whoever is coming to the room. So here are the certificates. This is how they will look when it reaches, of course, your mailboxes by today evening, hopefully. Okay, that's for the winning teams. Yeah. So each team, for the speakers, just to inform you, each team had about 5 students. Some had 3 students, and they were the ones. So everybody had this poster competition. And then based on our grading and student voting on whichever teams and presentations they really liked, these are the 3 teams that actually came on top. And they were very close. They were like,
and we're done.
And you're done. Okay. So maybe what we will do now is quickly do a group shot of all the speakers first. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, great. Now for the whole class, whoever is comfortable to switch on your webcams, activate them so we could take a photo of the class. So Pamir is on. Thank you so much. Anybody else? As you can see, guys, I teach ethics and it's so difficult because this is what I face usually. And that's how I realized I can talk, and hence my podcasts. Okay, we will take a quick screenshot. Okay, thank you everyone once again. And like I said, it's been great, and we could have continued, but unfortunately we do have a constraint of the time. Certificates will be emailed to everybody, including our experts. Thank you once again, experts, for your time and joining us from 3 different corners of the world. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.